Is this some kind of joke? Ashley Monroe's voice was tight, professional panic barely contained beneath her news anchor polish. She sat behind the gleaming desk of Channel 7's evening news set, mid-broadcast, her teleprompter still scrolling through a story about city council budget debates. But she wasn't reading anymore. She was staring at the man who had just walked onto the set, past security, past the control room, directly into the hot zone of live television. He was maybe 35, disheveled, wearing a stained jacket and jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His eyes were wild, darting, unfocused. And in his right hand, held with the shaking uncertainty of someone who'd never properly trained with firearms, was a pistol. "You're on the air," he said, his voice cracking. "Tell them. Tell everyone. They need to know the truth." The studio went silent. 27 people, producers, sound technicians, makeup artists, the co-anchor beside Ashley, all froze. This was supposed to be impossible. Channel 7 News at 6 was a local broadcast in a mid-sized city. Nothing ever happened here. The most dramatic story they'd covered this year was a high school football team making state finals. Behind camera 2, Douglas Crawford kept his hands steady on the grip, his eye to the viewfinder, the red recording light still glowing. At 69, he'd been operating cameras for this station for the past 8 years, ever since he'd retired from his real career and decided he needed something to fill the hours. Something quiet. Something safe. Something that didn't involve checking for IEDs before setting up a shot. The gunman was 10 feet from Ashley, his weapon wavering but pointed generally in her direction. The studio audience, a small group of 15 locals who'd come to watch the taping, huddled in their seats, too terrified to run. "Sir," Ashley began, her news anchor training kicking in despite her terror. "Sir, we're listening. What truth do you want to share?" "They're watching us. All of them. The satellites, the cameras, the chips in our heads. They're controlling everything and nobody cares." His finger tightened on the trigger. "But you're going to tell them. Right now. On live TV. You're going to expose them." In the control room, visible through the large glass window overlooking the studio floor, the director was frantically gesturing to cut the feed. But the technical director, a kid fresh out of college, was frozen, his hands hovering over the switcherboard but unable to move. The station manager was on the phone, probably calling 911, her face ashen. Douglas watched all of this through his peripheral vision while keeping the shot framed. His heartbeat was steady, his breathing calm. He'd seen this before. Different country, different circumstances, but the same energy. A man with a weapon, pushed past his breaking point, looking for someone to blame. Helmand Province, 2009. A Taliban fighter, wounded, cornered, holding a grenade with the pin half pulled. Douglas had been 15 feet away with his camera, documenting a Marine patrol. The fighter had been screaming about infidels and martyrdom. The Marines had their weapons raised, fingers on triggers, seconds from a bloodbath. Douglas had lowered his camera and spoken in broken Pashto. Not threats, just acknowledgement. Recognition that the man was scared and in pain. The fighter had dropped the grenade. The Marines had taken him alive. "Ashley," Douglas said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension without being loud. "Keep him talking. Don't make sudden movements." The gunman's head snapped toward him. "Who said that? Who's talking?" Douglas stepped out from behind the camera, his movements slow and deliberate. His hands were visible, open, non-threatening. He was wearing his usual uniform, khaki pants, a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a Channel 7 lanyard around his neck. His hair was gray, thinning on top, and his face had the kind of weathered quality that came from spending decades in the sun. "I did, sir. I'm just a cameraman. I want to make sure we get your message out clearly." "Stay back!" The gun swung toward Douglas. "I'm not moving. I'm right here. But I need to understand what you want to say. The camera is still rolling. The whole city is watching. This is your moment." The gunman's eyes locked onto Douglas. For a moment, something flickered there. Confusion, maybe, or recognition of something he couldn't quite place. You're not scared." "I am scared." But I'm listening. That's more important right now. The gunman took a half step closer to Douglas, the weapon still raised, but his attention now fully diverted from Ashley. The news anchor remained frozen at her desk, her co-anchor beside her slowly reaching for something under the desk, probably a panic button that had already been pressed. "You want to know what they're doing?" the gunman said, his voice rising. "They're tracking everyone. Every phone call, every text, every purchase. They know where you are every second of every day. And nobody questions it." Douglas nodded slowly. "That sounds terrifying. Feeling like you're being watched all the time. Feeling like you have no privacy." "It's not a feeling. It's real. I have proof." "I believe you. And I think a lot of people watching right now will want to hear about it. But here's the thing. If something happens to anyone in this studio, the feed gets cut. The police come in. Your message never gets out. You need us alive and broadcasting for your truth to reach people." The gunman's hand trembled. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He was teetering on the edge, and everyone in the studio could feel it. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and this would end in blood. In the control room, Douglas could see the station manager still on the phone, gesturing frantically. Through the glass, he could read her lips. "Police are 2 minutes out." 2 minutes was a lifetime in a situation like this. Douglas had learned that in Fallujah, when an insurgent had taken 3 journalists hostage in a bombed-out building. Douglas had been one of them. The other 2 had panicked, tried to fight back. They died. Douglas had stayed calm, kept his captor talking, found common ground. He'd walked out alive after 6 hours. "What's your name?" Douglas asked. "What?" "Your name. If I'm going to help you get your message out, I need to know who you are." The man hesitated. "Marcus. Marcus Jennings." "Marcus, I'm Douglas. I've been a cameraman for a long time. Before this station, I worked in some pretty dangerous places, and I learned something important. The most powerful message is one delivered clearly, calmly, without violence. Violence just makes people stop listening. They won't listen unless I force them to. They're listening right now. The camera is still rolling. You have a live audience. But the second you hurt someone, you become the villain. Your message becomes about violence, not about the truth you're trying to share." Marcus's gun hand wavered. "I'm not a villain. I'm trying to help people." "I believe you. So help them by staying calm. Tell them what you know. Let me keep the camera running. Let Ashley ask you questions. Give people a reason to care about what you're saying, not just be afraid of you." Behind Marcus, one of the younger crew members, a production assistant named Jake, was slowly inching toward the side exit. Marcus caught the movement in his peripheral vision and spun, the gun tracking. "Where are you going?" Jake froze, hands up. "Nowhere. I'm not going anywhere. Everyone stays. Nobody leaves until I'm done." The situation was escalating again. Douglas could see it in Marcus's body language, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his breathing quickened. This was the moment things could go catastrophically wrong. "Marcus," Douglas said, his voice firm but not aggressive. "Look at me. Not at him. At me." Marcus turned back. "That kid is terrified. He's not a threat. He's probably never been in a situation like this in his life. But I have. Many times. So if you need to watch someone, watch me. I'm the only person in this room who might actually be dangerous." It was a calculated risk, redirecting the man's attention, but it worked. Marcus's focus narrowed back to Douglas, away from the panicking crew members. "You? You're just an old man with a camera." "I am. But I've pointed that camera at Taliban fighters, Iraqi insurgents, Somali warlords. I've been shot at, blown up by an IED, held hostage twice. I've seen what violence looks like when it happens. And I've seen what happens to the people who cause it. They don't become heroes, Marcus. They become forgotten. Their message dies with them." Marcus's expression shifted. Confusion, doubt, the first cracks in his resolve. "I don't want to hurt anyone. he said quietly. I just want them to listen. Then put the gun down. Right now, you're making it impossible for anyone to hear you. All they see is the weapon. But if you put it down, if you show them you're serious about getting your message out peacefully, they'll listen. I promise you, they'll listen. For a long, agonizing moment, Marcus stood there, the gun still raised, his mind clearly at war with itself. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. The gun hit the floor with a metallic clatter that echoed through the silent studio. Marcus stood there, arms at his sides, body shaking. Ashley Monroe let out a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours. The crew remained frozen, nobody quite believing the threat had passed. Douglas moved forward slowly and picked up the weapon. He ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and set both pieces on the news desk, far from Marcus's reach. His movements were practiced, efficient. Someone who'd handled firearms in crisis situations before. Thank you, Marcus, Douglas said. That took courage. Marcus collapsed into Ashley's chair, head in his hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't make anyone listen. Police burst through the studio doors 30 seconds later. SWAT team, tactical gear, weapons raised. They swept the room, identified Marcus, and had him in handcuffs within 10 seconds. The crisis was over as suddenly as it had begun, but the cameras had captured everything. Channel 7's live feed had gone out to 60,000 households. National news networks had already picked up the story. By morning, the clip would have millions of views. The aftermath was chaos. Paramedics checked everyone for shock. Police interviewed witnesses. The station manager was alternating between thanking God nobody died and calculating the ratings windfall. Detective Sarah Chen found Douglas sitting in the break room, drinking coffee. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, and had already reviewed the footage 3 times. Mr. Crawford, I need to ask you some questions. Of course. You were incredibly calm during that incident. You de-escalated a potentially deadly scenario. Where did you learn to do that? Douglas sipped his coffee. Experience. What kind of experience? The kind that comes from being in similar situations. Chen pulled up a chair. I did some digging. Douglas Crawford, age 69, cameraman for Channel 7 for 8 years. Before that, your employment history gets interesting. Combat photographer for Associated Press, Reuters, and freelance for 30 years. You covered Vietnam at the tail end. Both Gulf Wars, Somalia, Afghanistan, Bosnia. You were embedded with military units, documented conflict zones, and have 2 Pulitzer Prize nominations. It was a long time ago. One of your photos is famous. The Last Stand from Fallujah, 2004. Marines defending a position while civilians evacuated. That photo ended up in every major newspaper in the world. You took it while actively under fire. I was doing my job. Your job was documenting war. For 3 decades. You saw things most people can't imagine. And now you operate a camera for local evening news covering city council meetings. Douglas set down his coffee. I got tired, Detective. Tired of documenting death. Tired of seeing the worst things humans do to each other. I wanted something quiet. Something normal. So I came here. But when the situation called for it, all that experience came back. Some things you don't forget. Like how to talk to someone who's scared and desperate. Like recognizing when someone is more dangerous to themselves than to others. Like understanding that violence is usually the last resort of people who feel they have no other option. Chen studied him. Marcus Jennings has a history of mental illness. Paranoid delusions. He's been off his medication for 6 months. He bought that gun 3 weeks ago at a gun show. No background check caught his psychiatric history. Is he going to get help? He's being evaluated now. Probably psychiatric treatment rather than prison, given the circumstances. Thanks largely to you. I didn't do anything special. Mr. Crawford, you talked down an armed man on live television for over 8 minutes. You redirected his attention away from panicking crew members. You gave him a narrative where he could back down without losing face. That's crisis negotiation at a professional level. Douglas shrugged. I've seen enough crises to know how they work. Would you be willing to give an interview? The press is asking for you specifically. No interviews. I'm just a cameraman. The story should be about Marcus and why someone in his condition could access a firearm so easily. Not about me. Chen handed him her card. If you change your mind, call me. The city would probably want to give you recognition. I don't need recognition. I just want to go back to filming city council meetings. She smiled. Something tells me that's not going to be possible now. Detective Chen was right. Going back to normal was impossible. Within 24 hours, the clip had gone viral. 10 million views. 20 million. Cable news ran it on loop. They called him a hero, a crisis expert, a guardian angel. Douglas ignored all of it. He showed up for his next shift, ready to film the weather segment. But the station manager had other plans. Doug, we need to talk, she said. I've had 50 interview requests. Good Morning America wants you tomorrow. CNN is offering to fly you to Atlanta. The mayor wants to give you a commendation. I appreciate that, but no thank you. This is incredible publicity for the station, for you. I operate a camera. I'd like to continue operating a camera. But you're so much more than that. People want to hear your story. Douglas set his bag down. My story is that I spent 30 years watching people kill each other. I documented wars, genocides, terrorist attacks. I saw children die. I saw cities burn. I took pictures because that was my job. After 30 years, I had enough. I don't want to be a story. I just want simple, quiet work that doesn't involve violence. The manager was quiet. What happened yesterday wasn't simple or quiet. No, but it ended peacefully. That's the difference. In my old life, things rarely ended peacefully. She nodded. All right, no interviews. But you probably saved lives yesterday. Marcus saved lives by choosing to put the gun down. I just gave him room to make that choice. He picked up his bag and went to camera 2. The evening news proceeded normally. City council debates, traffic reports, a story about a local teenager raising money for cancer research. Douglas filmed it all with the same steady professionalism. After the broadcast, Ashley Monroe approached him. Doug, I never got to thank you properly. I thought I was going to die. You kept your composure. That helped more than you know. I was terrified. Being terrified is normal. What you do while you're terrified is what matters. Douglas adjusted camera settings. You stayed calm, didn't provoke him, followed my lead. That took courage. Where did you learn all that? Douglas was quiet, his hands moving automatically. Helmand Province, 2009. Taliban fighter, wounded, holding a grenade. Marines wanted to shoot him. I convinced them to let me try talking first. Took 40 minutes, but he surrendered. Nobody died. You saved his life. I gave him the option to save his own life. That's all I did with Marcus, too. Ashley watched him work. Don't you miss it? The important stories? The recognition? I covered wars for 30 years. Won awards for documenting suffering. Had editors tell me my photos captured the human cost of conflict. Douglas looked up. But after a while, I started to wonder, what was I actually accomplishing? I was showing people horror, but horror kept happening. So I stopped. And now you film city council meetings, which is exactly what I want to do. 3 weeks later, Douglas's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Crawford, this is Marcus Jennings. Douglas stepped away from the set. Marcus, how are you? I'm in a psychiatric facility, court-ordered treatment. My lawyer says I probably won't face serious charges because nobody got hurt. His voice was steadier, medicated. I wanted to apologize. For what I did. For putting everyone through that. I appreciate you calling. The doctors say I was having a psychotic episode. that the paranoia wasn't real. He paused. You could have let the police shoot me, but you just talked to me, like I was a person. You are a person who was sick and scared. Thank you for seeing that. Thank you for giving me a chance. After the call ended, Douglas stood looking out at the familiar studio, at the cameras, the lights, the desk where Ashley would sit in 10 minutes. Some people chase the big stories, the dramatic moments, the awards. Douglas had done that for 30 years. He documented history, captured iconic images, traveled the world. And now he filmed weather reports and city council meetings in a mid-sized city nobody had heard of. And that was exactly where he wanted to be. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories of quiet masters who prove that true courage isn't about seeking danger. It's about knowing when you've had enough of it.